Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong of police interactions. This episode covers anti-discrimination laws, officer identifications, and trespassing, and is brought to us by Family Getaways channel. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve. On July 19th, 2022, the owner of Family Getaways channel, who we will refer to as Mr. Family, traveled to the Camp Landing Entertainment District, previously known as Kiowa Mall in Ashland, Kentucky, to confront a security guard about a situation that occurred earlier that day. According to Mr. Family, the security guard yelled at his wife and children and kicked them out of the mall while in the Artsy Fartsy Walk, which is described as an interactive art gallery. Mr. Family found the security guard in question and approached his vehicle.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good.
Were you the guy that kicked out two girls and a bunch of kids?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. You don't raise your voice to girls, a pregnant woman, and a bunch of kids.
Look.
No, there's no look. There's no look.
I will call the sheriff's department.
Call them then. What are you gonna do? Let them know that you're harassing women and children at this establishment. They did nothing wrong.
Yeah, come get a sheriff's deputy down to Camp Landing, and I have some reports. Come over harassing me after they was speaking on the property. Yes, ma'am, and I want all of them trespass.
Okay, a little power trip. You gotta run out women and yell out women and kids.
You went that way until the police got here?
I'm gonna wait right here.
Because you don't intimidate me, you don't scare me.
I ain't trying to intimidate and scare you. You try to intimidate and scare women and children, though. That's what you did. You just come in here and just kick out whoever you want out?
I can if I want to.
That's how it works. Just kick whoever you want out, no matter what.
I had a reason for kicking them out. She wants to run her mouth so she'll get kicked out.
Well, as you were yelling at her as she was walking out, they were leaving, weren't they? And you were yelling at them as they were leaving.
I told her to leave.
Oh, you're just security.
Hey.
You don't own this mall.
If I tell them to leave, they leave. So I mean.
Oh, you just get to tell whoever you want to leave.
I run something.
Yeah, security. That's all. Mall cop. That's it. You have a little security job.
And you're something standing here yelling at me?
Yeah, I'm suing you up for yelling at my wife and my pregnant wife and my children.
Nobody cares that your wife is pregnant. Nobody cares.
Yeah, evidently you did because you thought you could go yell at her and get away with it.
Nobody cares that your children got kicked out. No one cares.
Yeah, I do. I do. That's what that matters. Why don't you go wait in your car where the real cops come?
Mall cop, but they're gone. Hey,
yeah, mall cop thinking you can kick whoever you want out.
As much right to kick.
You can kick whoever you want out of this place, right?
If I want to.
You can walk in and kick anybody?
For any reason I see.
Any reason you feel like it.
While arguing with Mr. Family, the security guard claims that he can kick anyone out of the mall for any reason he sees fit. While malls are generally held open to the public, they are typically not public property, considering that they are not owned by the state or local government. In this case, the Camp Landing Entertainment District is owned by a private company known as Camp Investments LLC. As we will discuss later in this episode, a privately owned business has considerable discretion as to who to grant access to their property, and generally can trespass individuals from the location for personal reasons. However, anti-discrimination laws on both the state and federal levels place limitations on the reasons an individual can be refused service by a privately owned business. Under Title II of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which is codified in Section 2000A of Title 42 of the U.S. Code, quote, all persons shall be entitled to the full and equal enjoyment of the goods, services, facilities, privileges, advantages, and accommodations of any place of public accommodation, as defined in this section, without discrimination or segregation on the ground of race, color, religion, or national origin. The section defines a place of public accommodation as, quote, any inn, hotel, motel, or other establishment which provides lodging to transient guests, any restaurant, cafeteria, lunchroom, lunch counter, soda fountain, or other facility principally engaged in selling food for consumption on the premises, including but not limited to any such facility located on the premises of any retail establishment, or any gasoline station, or any motion picture house, theater, concert hall, sports arena, stadium, or other place of exhibition or entertainment. Additionally, the prohibition on discrimination also applies to any business that is physically located within a covered establishment, or that has a covered establishment located on its premises and, quote, holds itself out as serving patrons of such covered establishment. Kentucky has enacted a similar anti-discrimination law on the state level. Section 344.120 of the Kentucky Revised Statute states that, quote, it is an unlawful practice for a person to deny an individual the full and equal enjoyment of the goods, services, facilities, privileges, advantages, and accommodations of a place of public accommodation, resort, or amusement on the ground of disability, race, color, religion, or national origin. And Section 344.130 defines a place of public accommodation, recreation, resort, or amusement as, quote, any place, store, or other establishment which supplies goods or services to the general public, or which solicits or accepts the patronage or trade of the general public, or which is supported directly or indirectly by government funds. In this situation, because the Camp Landing Entertainment District includes a movie theater and restaurants, a court would likely conclude that the Title II of the Civil Rights Act applies to the mall, which would mean that the mall security guard could not legally kick out patrons on the basis of their race, color, religion, or national origin. The Kentucky anti-discrimination laws, which would also apply to the mall, would likewise prohibit the security guard from removing individuals on the basis of their disability, race, color, religion, or national origin.
So the kids are playing, you could just kick them out.
It doesn't. I mean, you're fixing to get kicked out. None of y'all will.
I don't care. They heard you yelling. My kids, I overheard them saying, I heard that man yelling, and that's the reason why I'm here.
I told them if they cannot.
Right, raising your voice and yelling in front of children.
Cannot keep your
I'm done talking. You're talking to real cops. Go away. I'm talking to real cops. Go away, more cop. How you doing?
Okay, first of all, drop the attitude. Because he wants you trespassed, so I need your ID first of all.
ID, did I do anything illegal?
I need your ID, he wants you trespassed. As soon as we have this conversation, you're gonna leave the mall property and you're not coming back.
That's fine. Can I have paperwork of that?
So, you can give me your ID.
I'll give you my ID if I do something illegal.
Okay? We haven't had a chance to talk to him yet.
Okay, but did I do anything illegal?
I'm on a call that I was dispatched, you're involved in. By
Okay.
state law, you have to take and give your ID. This is not up for discussion. Unless you want to find yourself in the back of my car, give me your ID.
On the risk of arrest, I'll give you my ID. Okay? On the risk of arrest, here's my ID.
Deputy Terry Nance of the Boyd County Sheriff's Office arrives on the scene and demands that Mr. Family provide his identification. And after challenging the legality of the order, Mr. Family eventually complies under the threat of arrest. Under Section 519.020 of the Kentucky Revised Statutes, quote, a person is guilty of obstructing governmental operations when he intentionally obstructs, impairs, or hinders the performance of a governmental function by using or threatening to use violence, force, or physical interference. Clearly, Mr. Family's conduct in refusing to identify himself did not rise to the level of obstruction under this statute. Likewise, Kentucky law does not have a stop and identify statute that requires individuals to identify themselves under threat of arrest when they're not driving a vehicle. And even if it did, it is unlikely that it would be constitutional for Deputy Nance to require Mr. Family to identify himself in this situation. While the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of stop and identify laws in the 2004 case of Hybel versus 6th Judicial District Court of Nevada, it specifically limited its holding to state laws, quote, requiring a suspect to disclose his name in the course of a valid Terry stop. Similarly, in the 1979 case of Brown versus Texas, the Supreme Court determined that it violated the Fourth Amendment for an individual to be convicted under a Texas stop and identify statute when the officers lacked any reasonable suspicion to believe that the defendant was engaged or had engaged in criminal conduct. However, it's important to note that even though Kentucky does not have a stop and identify statute, and an individual cannot be arrested and prosecuted for failure to provide identification, the Supreme Court of Kentucky concluded in the 2014 case of Kavanaugh versus Commonwealth that, quote, since an officer is constitutionally permitted to request identification, any failure to comply may still be considered along with other sufficient factors demonstrating reasonable suspicion. Therefore, while Mr. Family's refusal to identify himself would not allow the deputies to constitutionally arrest him, it could be taken into consideration when determining whether the officers had reasonable suspicion to detain him.
Ridiculous.
Come here.
Yeah.
What's your side of the story?
My wife comes home, says this guy yelled at her. I said,
Okay.
sure. I said, sure, whatever. And she goes, we went to the movies to complain about the guy yelling.
Okay.
Guy follows us to the movies. Says, just get out of the movies.
Okay.
And I said, what? What do you mean? She goes,
You talking about this guy here?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the exact guy.
Okay.
He said to come over here that you know, to get out the movies, all this stuff. So she comes home to me. She tells me this. As I'm telling me this, I can hear my kids in the background going, the mean young man's yelling. Yeah, I finally come back here. I approach him. I go, hey, listen, what's going on? He starts going, oh, you, it's not what you think. I'm waiting by that bench. He's in his car. He gets out his car, comes over to me, and starts saying I can kick who I want to kick out the more. Then he slowly changes it to, well, with due reason. That's the long and short of the whole story.
Okay. All right. Here's what you're going to have to do. You and your wife are going to come out here during business hours. Your wife isn't here, so I can't trespass her.
Fine.
You're going to be trespassed because that's what security wants. Okay?
Fine.
Talk to whoever the general manager is here or whoever's over. Talk to them. Explain the situation that happened tonight and see what, if anything, can be done to resolve the issue. The only reason you got the attitude that you did whenever we first showed up is because when I stepped out of the car, the way that you were yelling, carrying on, okay, I want to know who I'm dealing with when you're in that state of mind. And by law, if I'm dealing with you and I ask for your ID, you have to give me your ID. It doesn't mean you're under arrest or you're in trouble, okay?
Yeah, so I'm not trying to overrule you on anything, I promise you. But unless it's a stop and that state, you're not.
Okay, well...
or unless I'm being convicted of a crime or I committed a crime or I'm in the process of committing a crime.
I'm investigating.
Right.
Okay? So, yeah, you do have to, okay? It's just like a traffic stop. You do have to, okay? We're not going to discuss it here. We're not going to...
Fine.
But you're trespassed from this point on from this property. If you come back on this property, you will be arrested. Do you understand that?
Understand, 100%.
Okay.
Deputy Nance tells Mr. Family that he has been trespassed from the property and that if he returns to the mall, he will be arrested. According to Section 511.080 of the Kentucky Revised Statutes, quote, a person is guilty of criminal trespass in the third degree when he knowingly enters or remains unlawfully in or upon premises, which Section 511.010 defines as any building or real property. Section 511.090 of the Revised Statute states that, quote, a person enters or remains unlawfully in or upon premises when he is not privileged or licensed to do so. A person who enters or remains in or upon premises which are at the time open to the public does so with license or privilege unless he defies a lawful order not to enter or remain personally communicated to him by the owner of such premises or other authorized person. As mentioned earlier in this episode, mall owners and their representatives can typically trespass individuals from the property for a wide range of reasons, including their speech, as the First Amendment does not prohibit the private owners of shopping centers from discriminating on the basis of speech. In the 1972 case of Lloyd Corp versus Tanner, the Supreme Court determined that the First Amendment was not violated when a large retail shopping center in Portland, Oregon, prohibited the distribution of handbills within the building complex and its malls, overturning the lower court's holding that because the shopping center was open to the public and the functional equivalent of a public business district, the rule prohibiting the distribution of handbills within the mall violated First Amendment rights. In reaching this conclusion, the court reasoned that the privately owned streets and sidewalks of a business district or a shopping center were not, quote, the equivalent for First Amendment purposes of municipally owned streets and sidewalks, and therefore the private owner was within its rights to restrict speech within the shopping center. Given this precedent, it is likely that a court would conclude that Mr. Family could be trespassed from the mall in retaliation for his speech against the security guard without violating the First Amendment, and, as such, he could be constitutionally prosecuted for trespassing if he refused to leave or return to the property after being trespassed.
Can I have paperwork for that? by any chance,
So
please?
you have to talk to your general manager. We don't carry paperwork. We don't have paperwork. What it'll be recorded on is the dispatch CAD. So as soon as I'm done with you, I'm going to tell my dispatcher that you are, since I ran your ID, that you're trespassed, and it'll be on record at the Boyd County 911. Here's your ID back. You can leave the property.
Okay, what's your name and badge number? Just for the
Deputy
record?
Nance, 218.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And, sir, just because you were here, what's your name and badge number?
Deputy Aldrich, 239.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
After explaining how Mr. Family can attempt to have the trespass order removed, Deputy Nance ordered him to leave the property, and Mr. Family complied without further incident. The next day, Mr. Family uploaded the footage to his YouTube channel, which he had not previously used to share police interactions with the public. It is unclear whether Mr. Family was able to resolve the situation with the Camp Landing Entertainment District so that he and his family could return to the property. And as of the date of writing this episode, Mr. Family has not provided any updates or indicated whether he intends to pursue legal action. Overall, Deputy Nance gets a C, because although it was likely not illegal to trespass Mr. Family from the mall, the deputy initiated the encounter with a hostile demeanor, misrepresented the law on when individuals must identify themselves in Kentucky, and threatened to arrest Mr. Family for refusing to identify himself when he had no legal authority to do so. It is unclear whether Deputy Nance intentionally lied to Mr. Family in order to obtain his identification, or if he simply was mistaken about when he is legally permitted to demand identification and arrest individuals for refusing. Either way, it is completely unacceptable for an officer of the law to present inaccurate information about the law to a citizen, particularly when it compels them to identify themselves when they are not required to do so. A court would likely find that Deputy Nance's misstatement of the law and threats to arrest Mr. Family violated the Fourth Amendment, and I would urge all law enforcement officers to avoid such practices. Mr. Family gets a B+ for actively and respectfully challenging Deputy Nance's misrepresentations about when officers can demand identification in Kentucky while maintaining a polite and calm demeanor throughout the encounter. Although he behaved somewhat antagonistically in his communications with the security guard, he was well within his First Amendment rights to do so, and it is clear that Mr. Family only intended to defend his family after he felt they were mistreated. I commend Mr. Family for knowing and understanding the law regarding officer identifications better than Deputy Nance, and for attempting to educate him on the constitutional rights of citizens, and I would encourage him to continue to challenge abuses of power when he encounters them. Let us know if there is an interaction or legal topic you would like us to discuss in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out my second channel for even more police interaction content.